And just when I thought I was almost finished and I was trying to string the bow, this happened. And it took me a couple of seconds, and then I realized that I had made a serious design mistake with the design of this bow, or the crossbow itself. Stay tuned for the discussion of the build and my mistakes and what I learned at the end of the video. But now let's just rewind and get on with it. Try version 2, see if that works better.
Welcome to my channel. I'm Andreas. If it's your first time here and you liked what you saw, consider subscribing. I'd really appreciate your support. The subscribe button is just here in the corner. It's free and you won't miss any future videos. I usually post one every second Sunday morning European time. Now to the build. My son has wanted a toy crossbow for quite some time, so after doing a fair amount of research, we decided to build one. I have to talk about safety, of course, which I'll do later, so stay tuned for that. This is a toy that could be dangerous if you build it the wrong way or if you use it the wrong way, so make sure you keep safety in mind and stay tuned for my safety remarks at the end of the video. Now, what I learned. I had almost finished the build and I was just about to string the bow when the bow broke after quite some time and work had gone into it. And it took me only a couple of seconds to realize that I had made a fundamental mistake in designing the whole crossbow. I had thought I can just determine the length of the shaft here, or the main body of the crossbow, and then later decide how wide the bow would be. But when I tried to string it, I realized that, of course, as I have this notch here where the string has to go in, the length of the main body determines how far back I have to pull the bow. And if the bow is too narrow, that won't be possible with a bow of wood to bend so much that I can actually hook the string into this notch. You have to choose the width of the bow according to the length of the body. And I don't have any formula that you can use, but you just have to keep that in mind, because as you see, you have to pull that back and then this has to bend as much. And if this is too narrow, it will break before you can go all the way back. So I had to find out by trial and error what measurements work. So at the moment, this is about 35 centimeters and this is about 60 centimeters. And this works fine now with a bow made of ash wood. But I had to make it fairly thin to actually be that bendable. But making it that thin was not such a bad thing, because my first bow was much thicker and therefore it had much more power, and if it hadn't broken, I would probably have a bow with much too much force, which would not be safe in the hands of a child. It took me 4 attempts until I actually made a bow that worked and didn't break. I made it out of ash wood, which I had around here and which I remembered that English longbows were sometimes made of ash. I think they were mainly made of yew, but I didn't have that. And ash seems to have long fibers as well and seems to be usable or suitable for making bows. Another thing that took me quite some time to figure out was the trigger mechanism. I went for a very simple trigger with just one movable part. It's basically an L-shaped piece that hinges on a little shaft made of metal that I put in here. And if you pull the trigger, you push it up at the end and then you lift the string above that notch and then the whole thing goes off. I linked to my Pinterest board in the description. Pinterest is a wonderful resource if you want to build anything, to get ideas, because you find lots of stuff that other people have built, and there are plenty of options for mechanisms there as well. I went for the simplest with one movable part, but if you want to go more sophisticated, there are plenty of ideas there around as well. So I'll link to that, as I said. Still, even with all the pictures and ideas from Pinterest, it took me quite some time to figure out the right dimensions. So I used a cardboard model first, which is a good idea, I think, because it's much quicker to actually design something, cut it out and try it out. And once I had the dimensions and I had a rough idea of how large the hole should be and how long this piece and the cutout should be, then I made it out of wood and it worked fairly well. Now a word about safety. Of course, this is a toy, so it mustn't have too much force, and we're using blunt arrows so that nobody gets hurt. Still, you have to try out that your bow doesn't have too much force. We actually shot it in a blanket and saw that it doesn't hurt anyone, and then I made a self-test, had my son shoot it at my belly from about 2 meters. This gives a bit of a bump, but it didn't really hurt, so I was sure nothing can happen. Still, the main thing is an educational safety measure, which is know your kid, know if he or she can handle that, if he or she knows not to shoot at people and so on. For example, we have a very strict rule in our household that any toy weapons are never pointed at people. So this works 100% reliably, or has worked in the past, so I'm fairly confident that I can give my son this crossbow without getting into any problems because he shoots at somebody and hurts somebody. Once again, keep that in mind and try this out. Don't give it too much force, because this, if done in the wrong way, or if it has too much force and used with the wrong arrow, this can be a deadly weapon. Finally, you saw that I have a new spindle sander that I used for this, which was excellent because I could sand all these round edges here. And I'd like to thank Triton for their support. It came just at the right time, because without the spindle sand, it would have been much harder to actually build this shape in the nice, clean and smooth fashion that it turned out. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did, I'd appreciate if you give it a thumbs up, if you share it, if you leave a comment, and if it's your first time here, once again, maybe you want to subscribe to my channel. Hope to see you back soon, and as always, remember to watch, learn, and then make something.